Welcome back to the Low Man Help podcast. I'm Mark Campbell. I'm joined today by our good friend who was all over the Zion Williamson and the Pelicans beat, has now working for The Athletic on the Mavericks beat. You come over to Dallas. You're there for a few months. You're trying to sell your home in New Orleans. You're trying to move into a new one in Dallas. And then all of a sudden, Nico Harrison drops the Luka Dončić trade on you. Christian Clark, welcome back to the pod. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I think I watched a total of 10, 11 games that Luka played. That was the extent of Luka Dončić that I got to cover. 10, 11 games. You know, it was a good couple of weeks.
Man, you thought you're coming over, you're going to watch NBA Finals basketball for the next 10 years. Luka Dončić is going to be leading the way every couple of years. You're in the mix, and then boom, see ya. Generational talent out the door.
I mean, yeah, I think that was definitely the most shocking trade, NBA trade I've ever seen. Klay Thompson, compared it just in terms of shock value to the decision. And then he noted, but LeBron did that on his own accord. He mentioned yeah, that was LeBron's choice. This was not the player's choice.
Yeah. It's where were you? First off, where were you? Because I think Penelope, our daughter, had a rough night. So I was sleeping, and I think I rolled over in the morning and I read an email from somebody or a text, and it was all caps, and I was like, this isn't real. So were you up? Was it a phone? What happened? Give me a rundown of how you heard.
I go to bed pretty early. I mean, I was traveling for work. I'm with the Mavericks on this 5-game road trip. Game number 4, the 5 is tomorrow in Philadelphia. I was in a Cleveland hotel room, kind of finished up some work. I had no inkling the Doncic stuff was going to happen. I think, almost everybody was like that, even people who get paid to report on the team. I'd gone to bed, that day I had filed 1,200 words about minor trade targets. I was like, oh, a backup center, another wing they can throw on 3 and 4s. I think I wrote in the piece, I was like, will Nico Harrison make a deal at the deadline for the 4th straight year? Well, we'll see. It could be a small one, just a real, move around the margins. Well, yeah, he did make a deal for the 4th year in a row. I was half asleep. My phone kept buzzing, and I checked it, and I was in that, that zone where it's half awake, half asleep. You're like, is this real? And then the adrenaline kicked in, and I was just up for the next 6 hours.
Oh my God. I mean, it's just when you heard it, you were like this, because everybody's reaction was Sham's account has been hacked. So honestly, that has to, when you make a deal and everybody's reaction is Ashton Kutcher's about to pop out and be like, yo, you guys all just got punked. That can't feel good. So you're there, everybody thinks Shams is getting hacked, and you're starting to put the pieces together. And what was those first 6 hours when you're up and you're just kind of trying to chase every lead down that you can?
Yeah, I mean, really stressful. I like to at least be prepared for all possibilities. I mean, going into the draft every year in New Orleans, you got to at least consider the possibility and talk to people that Zion's going to get traded as good as he is. And mentally, I like to be just prepared for anything. It helps me, formulate takes quickly. I mean, I just mentally was not prepared for this. I mean, I felt like I froze like a robot or something. I needed to be unplugged and plugged back in again. I felt paralyzed. I feel like the stuff I did wasn't very good work because I was just so shocked. I'm just being honest. I couldn't believe that this happened. I mean, mentally, I was like, all right, I'm going to Dallas. I'm going to be there a couple of years at least, and I'm going to be covering and writing about Luka Dončić. I mean, look, yeah, there were conditioning diet concerns, of course, but this is not the Zion situation where Zion couldn't be available enough to even get the Pelicans into the playoffs. Luka was getting the Mavericks into the NBA Finals. They're not really Luka and Zion had some similar problems, but they're not really analogous situations just because Luka was just so much more accomplished. I mean, it was just tough for me to compute what happened. And I mean, just seeing that picture of him in the Lakers jersey, I feel like my eyes burned. It was like somebody threw acid in my eyes.
It just my Sunday morning. I'm downstairs and my wife's looking at me. My phone's going crazy. I'm like not even checking it. I look over. I'm looking at it. My face looks just like probably like dead inside. She's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "There was like this really big NBA trade." And my wife is not a basketball fan at all. Like she likes basketball, but she's not. She's not digging. She's not on hoops hype or anything like that. So so like I'm trying to explain it to her, and she's like, this seems weird. Why would anybody do that? And I'm trying to figure out like an analogy. And so the best I can come up with, I'm looking at her, I'm like, all right. So like she was like, why would somebody give up somebody that's so much better and they're younger? That makes no sense. And I was like, all right, look, here's the thing. It's kind of like The Bachelor, where you're in this house and they give you all this alcohol and there's only one other person around. You can't talk to anybody from the outside world. And you're like, oh my God, I love this person. They're the best. You don't get to talk to anybody. And then you show up to the after show and they're like, why would you ever be with this person? I was like, that's what this guy, Rob Pelinka, did to Nico Harrison. He wouldn't let him tell anybody. He wouldn't let him talk to anybody. And he was like, yeah, don't tell anybody. This is us. And then he showed up to the after show and everybody's like, what are you doing? It was truly maddening to try to like figure out how do you go down this path and not bring people in and you give up the best player that truly anybody under 25 would want to start a franchise around.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's the number of people that knew about these conversations in the weeks up to the transaction actually happened. Obviously, not very many. I will say that colleagues at the Athletic, Fred Katz and Sam Amick, they reported that they did contact at least one other team about a potential deal. I mean, I believe that to be true. Can't really speak much to that. It's not really my scoop. I'll just say like I believe that to be true. I asked Nico in the press conference when he talked before the Cavs game, you know, did you only talk to the Lakers? Were they the only team you talked to? He said the word no, and then he went into a long answer about his negotiations with Rob Pelinka over a period of 3 to 4 weeks. It was started out as a coffee between those guys, and it was like, would you ever do this? Well, I don't know. Would you? And it just progressed from there. Look, I think the Mavs perspective is like they really wanted Anthony Davis, and they believe like their window is right now. Kyrie Irving is 32 years old. They believe they can like compete for championships, with Kyrie, with Anthony Davis, and the centers they can put next to AD. I think over the next 2-3 years, I think they look at that as like, okay, we have a 2 to 3 year window with Kyrie, with AD, and we're going to try to win. And I think the other piece of context too is Jason Kidd was the assistant coach on the Lakers team that won the bubble championship in 2020. I think he could. That was like a defense first team. Like I think part of the Mavericks' belief that they could win a championship being a defense first team is because of Jason Kidd's experience with the 2020 Lakers.
It's really weird. There's a few things like to unpack there. Like one, not telling Jason Kidd about it. And I watched the press conference and talking about archetypes and how they're aligned. Like it just feels like Luke is kind of outside like the Overton window of like archetypes that you're aligned on. Like that might be one that you might want to say like, hey, I know we're aligned on archetypes, but like, do you think the generational guy that every team would kill for, like he's kind of, we're okay with his archetype being different. Like that's one for me. The other would be thinking about the time frame in the window. And I've talked about this with plenty of people, and the idea that the time frame that they're working off of is Kyrie's instead of Luka. And you think about Lively and you think about Omax and kind of guys that are trying to come along, but it seems like Luka is the time frame, and it seems like they see in the front office that Kyrie is the actual time frame. And to me, that's just a weird one to try to comprehend, that the time frame that you're working off of is not the guy who's the 5-time first team all NBA guy at 25. It's like this enigma type character that's never actually been the best player on a team that's gone to the finals or done anything like that.
Yeah, look, I mean, even when Kyrie and Luka were both Mavericks, the Mavericks, I think considered Kyrie Irving really their locker room leader. I don't think they considered Luka the locker room leader. I mean, I think Kyrie was one of the main people looked to, and it's like it is just interesting. Like given Kyrie's career history, like he is he is the guy here. He's driving everything. I mean, in his defense, he's been like unbelievable on the court as a Dallas. There have not been any of the controversies here that there were in Brooklyn, that there were in Boston. Like that stuff has just not really occurred in his time with the Mavericks. But yeah, I mean, look, it is just hard to fathom that you'd be like, okay, like no, we need to build this around the 32-year-old guy who is, as it said, he's playing with a bulging disc in his back year this year, who's a little bit smaller versus the 25-year-old guy who dragged you to the Western Conference Finals in 2022, who averaged 29 points per game in the finals. I mean, here's the most amazing Luka Dončić stat to me. He's second all time in postseason scoring average. You know who the only guy ahead of Luka Dončić in postseason scoring average is? I bet you can guess, Mr. North Carolina.
And now from North Carolina, I mean, when you're number 2 behind the GOAT, when you're behind MJ on a list like that, when the games matter the most, you don't move. You are there. You are there. You build around that. That is the time frame. That is the system. To me, he's the Jokic is a different animal in the playoffs because he creates problems from a different position. But for people that have the ball in their hands at the point of attack, there is nobody in the world like Luka when it comes to the playoffs. And the playoffs are all about problem solving. They're all about creating problems that teams have troubles solving. They're all about putting your pressure on one thing and then watching the dominoes go from there. And when you watch him in the playoffs, the teams he's gone up against Kawhi Clipper teams multiple times. He's gone up against, Durant teams. He's gone up against the Boston teams. He's gone up against double bigs and Gobert and Cat. Every single iteration of teams you can think of, he's gone up against. And he has either beaten them and given them problems they can't solve, or pushed them to the brink with lesser teams and given them all they can handle. And to me, it's truly wild to think that you're trying to win a championship and you have the guy that not only creates but solves the most problems from the lead guard position, and you don't think he's your timeline. And so I dug into Second Spectrum today and I watched all these pick and rolls of him from the playoffs. It's wild. Last year in the playoffs, in the whole totality of it, about 800 pick and rolls for him, 800 pick and rolls in 4 rounds. 13.5% of them were blitzed. So we're bringing 2 to the ball 13.5% of the time that he's in the action. And the average distance that these screens are at are 30 feet away. That's the average. If you go back and watch the Minnesota series, he's bringing 2 to the ball 45 feet away from the basket. The Mavs are playing 4-on-3, running downhill in 45 feet of space in the half court. That's not common. These guys are shooting practice shots in the Western Conference Finals. And the idea that that's not the timeline, that's not the guy you build around in this league where playoffs are everything and solving problems are everything and creating problems are everything. It's something that I think myself and also collectively basketball people are just having such a hard time wrapping their mind around.
It's unfathomable. Even with the conditioning issues. I mean, the other part of it is Luka wanted to stay in Dallas. I mean, he was Supermax extension eligible this upcoming summer. He said in a statement he released on Sunday night, I thought I was going to spend my whole career in Dallas. There was some reporting that came out today, Monday afternoon, that he was about to close on a new house in Dallas. Words are one thing, but that his business manager is confirming these reports that he was going to close on a new house in Dallas. That's an action. That tells you a lot right there. That says okay, this guy's he's pretty invested in being here.
The idea of, I heard in the press conference, Nico wanted to get out in front of what could have been potentially a tumultuous summer because other teams were loading up. I mean, the idea that there's already a blueprint in Dallas, I always think Kevin Pangos is a good friend. And he told me 2 things that he always thought about when it came to recruiting in college. You want to go one level down where, you're going to play the top teams and you're going to be in a better position with more of a role. And the second thing, and he said, this is the most important one. You want to go to a place where they've had somebody like you and they've had success. Well, hey, they've had Dirk Nowitzki, who has had a 20-year run there, brought a championship, and is a European player and has a statue outside. Like there's no other place in the league that he could go where there's a blueprint of somebody like me that has been here, that has had success and is still in the area. So for him to be thought of as like, hey, maybe this guy isn't it for us, like, teams are loading up to get him when he's been really clear and there's a blueprint. I don't get it. It's truly like outside of my brain power to try to compute that.
And I think that was, the Dirk Nowitzki story is why the fan base has had, such a hard time with this. Dirk, there were so many struggles, and he was like the all-time loyalty guy. They lost in the finals in 2006 in a heartbreaking series to the Heat. He stuck with the team. They stuck with him. 2011, he wins. And then there's some really lean years. Which kind of put them in the position to get Luka. Dirk and Luka play together for one season before Dirk hangs it up. And it's like, okay, the torch got passed. That was the feeling. It's like, we got to enjoy this one guy for 21 seasons. And maybe it won't be 21 seasons, but we'll get to enjoy this new guy for 10 seasons, 15 seasons.
We're off to a pretty good start here. Like, we're not doing bad.
It won't be 6.5 seasons, and 5 of those seasons were years in which he made first team All NBA. I mean, think about that. He made a first team All NBA 5 times. He's been in the NBA for 6.5 seasons, and the team traded him.
And you asked this in the press conference. I heard you ask this. You asked about the fans. And I think it's such a crucial part because there is this business element and there is this like fan element. But without the fan element, the business doesn't exist. Like you can always say like, oh, it's a business and we're in the business to win or we're in the business to make money. But unless the fans are there, unless there's actually demand for your supply, nothing else matters. So about the fans and the outrage and how they feel, like what's been the vibe that you've gotten so far?
Yeah, heartbreak, sadness, anger. I mean, did you see the videos of the protest happening outside American Airlines Center the day they made the trade? I mean, people were bringing candles, jerseys. There was a coffin. That people brought to Dirk Nowitzki's statue, outside American Airlines Center. They had a mock funeral to celebrate the death of Luka Dončić's career in Dallas, not by his own choice. Yeah, I think fans are feeling all of those things, and I completely understand why. I mean, like you've got team media people, like, one of them shared a video of like a family member like crying basically in reaction to the Luka Dončić trade, and they're not disagreeing with it. I'm not like telling on them. They're not saying anything wrong. They're just showing what people are feeling in like the DFW Metroplex. Like, people are crying. They're like reduced to tears.
Okay, so from the other side, and because I'm somebody that if the film tells me one thing and if what I'm seeing on the court tells me one thing, you have to follow it, no matter if you're the one doing the zag. I always say, the first one through the wall always gets bloodied. And so like, looking into this, like if there's another side to it, like if the film and everything says like this is where we need to go, then okay. It's tough for me to see it, but it's possible. So is there anything in your mind when you look at this team, when you look at the construction that's about to be put together, like what do you like about this team? What can they do?
Yeah, I mean, Kyrie and Anthony Davis, that's just a great duo to start with. I mean, like that's go pick and roll with that. AD,
do they complement each other? When I think of just when I watch the Mavs play and when I watch small, and Kyrie was blitzed a ton in the pick and roll in the playoffs as well. But when I watch, these guys play, I think about Luka's ability to bring the blitz out further. I think about his ability. One thing he does against blitzes is like, it's not just pocket pass. Everything's an option for him. He can, at his size, he can lift, he can see, he manipulates low man help in terms of he can see if you're pulling all the way in to take the roller and he'll go to the corner, or if you're trying to stunt and stay in the corner, he'll go roller. There's just so much that he can do at his size. So thinking about Kyrie and AD or Kyrie and Lively as being, the focal point of this two-man thing, is it going to open up the same amount of space? And if it does, great. I don't think it will. But if it doesn't, how much does that reduce everybody on your roster where you're grading them on a scale of what they look like in the playoffs with Luka?
Yeah, I guess the question that I have about this trade is it was a roster that was really optimized for these two elite ISO scorers. And now it's like, does this roster fit that well with Anthony Davis? Anthony Davis has wanted to play power forward throughout his career. He can do that here. I mean, like in that 2020 title run, he did play, a lot of power forward, especially in that Nuggets series, but he also started at center in a lot of those games, including like the closeout game of the finals. I guess I'm interested to see like defensively. I mean, this team doesn't have like the perimeter defenders that 2020 Lakers title team did. I mean, that Lakers team had Caruso, your boy Danny Green, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. This Mavs team has got like, Kyrie. I mean, PJ Washington is a perimeter defender on this team. They've got 34-year-old Clay. They've got Quentin Grimes. There's just not the caliber of perimeter defender on this team as there was on that championship Lakers team. But you do have AD, who is, one of the best defensive players in all of the NBA when he's right. It's probably like, to me, when Anthony Davis is at his peak, it's like him and Wembanyama. Those are the two best defenders in the NBA.
It's interesting. This move feels to me, and I've always felt this, and this was something that really stood out. The best way to guard Jokic in the playoffs is with two bigs. If you have four other small guys out there, he's either going to pummel, the small guy or the double. If you put him in the pick and roll and there's a small guy as the low man help or the tag, it's not going to matter. He's going to make that work. So guarding him with two bigs is the formula, if not to stop him, but to at least slow him down as much as possible. That's not a ton, but it's the best you can do. And that's been throughout all the playoffs. The Lakers you talked about last year with Minnesota, that's just the way to do it. So like this feels like a move to counter that. Maybe they felt like they couldn't go Lively and Gafford against Jokic, and they didn't see Jokic last year. So possibly that's it. And they think this is the thing that we actually have to go through in the West and not anything else.
And you look at the best, the top two teams in each conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who just, crushed severely injury depleted, trade wary Mavericks team. They start Evan Mobley and Jared Allen together, and that's part of their formula for being elite. They also have, two great shot creators off the dribble. Yeah, they've got like the Kyrie and Luka part plus the two giants together.
They have the two guys that have to be blitzed and just totally shred pick and roll coverages apart.
Yeah, but also the Oklahoma City Thunder, they haven't been able to play it because Chet Holmgren is out with a broken hip. But they're at least going to have that option if they want to of playing Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein together. Now, Chet Holmgren can shoot threes. I mean, he can play the four and give you a little space that way. Mobley shoots some threes. And they also just have those two great guard
all these bigs are equal. Yeah, like none of these bigs are really going to scare you. I think Chet's probably the best shooter out of all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think if you tell me AD is a stretch big, I don't believe you. I'm not going to buy. I wasn't born last night. I was born at night, but not last night. So don't tell me he's a stretch 5. He's a stretch 4. He doesn't shoot it. He doesn't want to shoot it. Darvin Ham's whole spiel about, he's going to shoot 6 threes. They asked JJ. JJ's like, well, I just want him to be willing to shoot. He doesn't want to shoot threes. He's not a good 3-point shooter. Like he's not a stretch big. So you're playing two guys that are not going to be able to space the floor. It's going to make it really, really tough to be able to like create these driving lanes that existed before where we're talking about, 4-on-3 and 35 feet of open space. Like NBA players are going to tear that apart. I don't think you're going to get that here.
And one of my biggest takes about this trade is this is an incredible burden on Kyrie Irving, especially if they don't get more creation in here. I mean, it's one thing to be like the primary creator in like a month-long stretch when Luka Dončić is out with a calf injury. It's like another thing to be the primary creator in an 82-game season and 4 rounds of playoffs. That's the Mavericks' goal to play 4 rounds in the playoffs. I mean, that's a huge burden physically, mentally for a guy who's 32 years old, who's 6'1",
he's done it before, but it didn't go well. Boston, I would say, was the one time that he was the primary guy. He was the lead guy, lead creator. Yeah, I don't think Boston anybody was like, this is a rousing success. They were ready to get out of the Kyrie business.
Yeah, it's a big ask. It's a really big ask of Kyrie. The other thing with their roster, I mean, I don't I don't think they're done making trades either. And I don't know who is gettable that helps you that much, but they have a lot of guards, but not a lot of creators, if that makes sense. I
What
mean,
are
like,
they armed with to help themselves trade wise?
so the two guys I look at, and they're not on huge salaries right now, Quentin Grimes and Jaden Hardy. Like, they basically got like four guys they can plug in at lead guard when Kyrie goes to the bench. They've got Dante Exum, Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, Jason Kidd likes both those guys. He likes to give both those guys minutes. And then you've got Quentin Grimes and Jaden Hardy. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see, you know, someone in that guard group being sent out before Thursday. And I don't know what that's going to fetch, but it doesn't feel like they're done making moves to me.
If my big question is, if the timeline is, 3 to 4 years, and if, which another wild comment, they might bury both of us in 3 to 4 years. We won't be here in 10 years, like, which is just wild to hear out loud. But if that's the timeline is Omax, then something that you try to get somebody to be excited about. Cause I've watched him play a little bit. Like, the shot's not there. It's really not. But, I'm a big believer of you can teach people to shoot, and all the other intangibles are definitely there. I mean, he's lineup versatility. He can play up at the 4, play down at 3. You can be really big. And the idea that the timeline's 34 and PJ Washington and Gafford and these guys, well, like, he doesn't fit that timeline. Could you see him being out the door at this deadline?
I mean, honestly, I haven't heard anything, regarding Omax, but, like, to your point, just about the basketball fit, there's not a lot of room for guys who can't shoot threes on this team, with the way it's configured now. And Omax, great motor, does a lot of nice things, but he can't shoot. I mean, the shot is just not far along. It's just hard to throw, a 4 next to AD or a 3 next to AD and Lively or Gafford who can't shoot, and he can't shoot. I mean, I haven't looked up in a while what he is from 3 this year, but, like, I think he's in the 20s. And
I don't think it's good. Yeah, I don't think it's good.
And you just watch it too. You just watch it.
Yeah,
like,
you can look at it. You can be like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's more about, to me, it's always about how people catch the ball. Like, do you catch it? Or do you have great shot prep footwork? Like, are you looking at this catch as like, you're really excited to let this one rip? And, like, I don't know that I've seen a catch from him where he's like, oh yeah, this one's going up. Like, I'm pumped for this one. They're all like, yeah, I think I got to shoot this one. He's 23.8% from 3 this year. It's not really going that great. So to me, I love PJ, though. We talked about PJ the other day. I think PJ obviously fits. He's one of those guys that I felt unlocked their lineups last year. He unlocks them this year. He gives you a little bit of shooting, gives you creation, he gives you ball handling. And at his size, I think he's really deceptively a bigger player. You think of him and he plays the 3, but I think he can play up at the 4. He can play 3 in a huge lineup. I mean, they will be big.
I think he is a 4. Like, I'm kind of wondering if he's going to look and be less effective if he's asked to play a lot of 3 next to Anthony Davis and Lively or Gafford.
I think you're right, because he does.
I think he's
thrive.
a power forward.
Yeah, he does thrive on the lesser defender guarding him in terms of moving in space, or if a smaller guy's on him, being able to bully a little bit. Like, he's a matchup nightmare, but I don't know if he's a matchup nightmare if everything's really compressed. I think he'd rather drive the ball than shoot the ball. I think shooting the ball is one of those things that he tries to use to get better driving lanes, but I don't think he's like, yeah, I really want to be the one to space the floor for us. I think that takes away the effectiveness of you get somebody with a big frame like that to be able to move handling the basketball. You get them on the move, they get a little bit of an angle and they're in rhythm and on balance. It's a tough ask to ask anybody to handle that, but he might be neutralized quite a bit more with this lineup.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of his favorite things to do is, drive guys inside and just use his physicality, his post moves, his craft to score them. He likes to just dribble you inside, outside to in, and then score on you. And it's just harder to do that when you got AD and a center on the floor with you.
Yeah, he gets those pool ball buckets where he's just like, he stops and then all of a sudden he's up in your space. He's a pool ball player. So I think for me, the biggest thing is looking at this from the outside in. This is the last thing we'll get you out on. Looking at it from the outside in, obviously nobody knew it was coming. This is a massive short of Luka Dončić. I saw something comparing it to the Big Short and the mortgage crisis. Like, this is an obvious big short of Luka. What is the time frame on the short? Because every short has a moment where, you know, the squeeze starts coming. What is the time frame on this short before Nico Harrison is either lauded as, you know, the guy who was out in front and he's the Christian Bale of this story, or he's going to be the other end of the spectrum? Like, where do we stand on this? What do we think?
I mean, I feel like they've got a 3-year window. I mean, Kyrie's 32 years old right now. I feel like it's 3 years max. I mean, there's durability concerns with Kyrie and AD, you know, right away. The one thing I will say about the short analogy, and you know, I'm not a day trader. You know, I don't know that much about the world of high finance or anything, but I think if you're right about a short, then you get insanely rich. And even if the Mavericks
Absolutely.
are insanely right about Luka, I don't know that they're going to get insanely rich. They could be right, and it's like, yeah, this still felt really underwhelming, you know. And it's like they could have just been better off. Well, we were right about him, and his habits were really bad, but we're still better off sticking with him. I don't know. I just don't see as much upside here. But I also could be wrong. I don't know. There are smart people I've talked to in the NBA who are like, I think they've got a really good chance to be good short term.
Let me give you the other side of a short, because yes, if you're right, the upside is massive. But when you're dealing with a short, you're also dealing with a force on the other side that has the ability to move the needle and make your short a lot more advantageous to be in or a lot worse. And so in this short, Luka is on the other side. And if this guy goes out in LA, and I've met quite a few NBA people in my life, and I've worked with some all NBA guys. And there's nothing like the competitiveness of NBA guys, and there is nothing like the competitiveness of the top guys. And so you just gave this guy so much fuel for the fire. Like, he is going to be burning on this energy for years to come. So when you're in a short, there's also the other side, and it's Luka. And I don't want to be the one betting against that, but they are. And so if he goes out there and he just becomes a rocket ship in LA, that puts so much pressure on your short position, no matter how good you're doing.
Yeah, I hate that he's going to another team with, you know, like the tweets and reporting that like they thought his diet and his conditioning was terrible. And I'm sure they told him that when he was here, but it's like, it's another thing for him to like see it on social media on his way out the door. I mean, if this doesn't motivate you to change your habits, I don't know what will. And, you know, I said that with Zion a lot too. I was like, well, if this doesn't make you want to change, then I don't know what will. And just, there wasn't that much change. I will say that like, it's really weird with him right now. And he's still missing a lot of games, but he physically looks okay. But
nobody bet against him like this, though. Like, nobody bet it. Like, they shipped him out in the dead of night. They didn't come to him about it. They didn't say we're going to do this. They didn't give a list of like, hey, we want to get the most for you. Let's figure this out. Like, they were just like, you're out. We're done. We don't think you're a good coworker anymore. Nobody likes you in the work environment. Like, see you later. And they gave him a ton of stuff to sit in the tank and be like, you know what? When I come see you on, I think they played on the 25th of March or the February, or I know it's the 9th of April. When I come see you on that date, like, be ready. Get the popcorn out. Be ready.
I mean, fierce competitor, you know, like pulled the Mavericks back from 0-2 hole against the Suns in the Western Conference semifinals, then laughed in Devin Booker's face. Hit a game-winner step back over Rudy Gobert, game 2 of the Western Conference Finals, which like basically guaranteed them a series win, and then, you know, was just like a dog about it. I mean, yeah, that's a guy I would be really wary about motivating, and I think, you know, the Mavericks gave him plenty of bulletin board material.
I'm just excited to watch the scheme that they come up with. I like it. The schematics of it, they work for me. The personnel inside of it do not. I don't agree with giving it up, but Nico's in his own position and he really probably doesn't care what I think. On the other side, I'm also intrigued to see how does LeBron handle this moment? How does he either A, shepherd and empower Luka, or B, butt heads with him on his way out because his career is coming to an end? And I think there's probably a moment here where he's smart enough to know that this guy can carry a massive burden for him and that he can evolve and reinvent himself similar to the Westbrook, Jokic, Denver situation. So there's an element to that. I mean, he's incredibly brilliant as a player. So, that guy doesn't understand kind of what's going on the court. So seeing him adjust to this, seeing him move, there's a part of me that thinks like the Lakers rocket ship is ready to just take off at this point.
It's a sickening sentence. I think a part of this that like so many NBA fans are frustrated about was the Lakers. They were at the end of their rope, right? It was like, okay, LeBron, they just weren't going to be very good. There were no outs for them. I mean, it was just like, okay, like they kind of did this themselves. The Westbrook thing was catastrophic, and it's been really hard for them to dig themselves out of that hole. And it's like, all right, let them do this. And it's like, this is just an out for them.
Let them die on the vine. Let them die on the vine. And Pelinka, Bachelorettes, Nico Harrison, and now it's who's not coming to LA to play with this dude? Guys were willing to come to Dallas to play with him. People wanted to come to Dallas to play with him. It's not that Dallas isn't really nice. Dallas is very nice, but like LA is LA, and everybody wants to everybody lives there in the summer. They all want to go there to play. When you get the Lakers pixie dust, like money goes up, social media goes up, and trips to the free throw line go up. Like if there's those three things, death, taxes, and Lakers pixie dust increasing all the inflation on the things that you really care about. So like everybody's coming. It's wild to think about. Christian Clark, thank you for joining us. Everything you do, The Athletic, is great. Read everything you write. So happy that you were able to do this. Enjoy the last two of the roadie. Get some good cheesesteak.
I appreciate you, brother.
Later.